Hello there! Merry Crimbo, Happy New Year. January is known as the slowest month for video game releases, and although it's still sleepy time for many publishers, there are still a bunch of video games worth your time, from the AAA to the free-to-play, and a few hidden gems along the way. Here's 9 of the best for January. Kicking off the month is the next Dynasty Warriors game, Origin, or Dynasty if that's how you pronounce it, it's all good with me. Dynasty Warriors is a long-running series that takes melee action into the absurd with a single warrior slashing through thousands of enemies, barely taking a scratch, as armies trail back for miles. We class these hack and slash wars as Muso games, where the action and physics are cranked up to 11, but the setting of the game world is grounded by real events. This time we're going back to the Three Kingdoms era of China's history and fighting on the battlefield to see who will reign over the empire. Our character also has amnesia, which remains a staple way to tell a story to new players. Updates to the series include a tabletop RPG style open world to move between locations, and a substantial lean into tactical play as we command troops and must monitor the army's morale and the bravery of soldiers, which can affect other soldiers in their regiment, and also decrease the effectiveness of the enemy. That all said, it's the sheer number of enemies rushing forward which continues to impress, especially on current tech. Oh, and there's also a PS5 Pro patch too. Dynasty Warriors Origin hits PS5, Xbox Series and PC on January 17th. Next, we have the return of Sniper Elite in Resistance. The stealth-focused tactical shooter is now on its 10th entry. With lots of upgrades and updates over the years, it still remains known for one single thing: bullet time slow-motion snipes from crazy distances, taking into account bullet drop and wind resistance, and even your own heartbeat to line up targets. Then the X-ray cam shows exactly where the bullet enters and teaches us a great deal about biology. We're going back to the 1940s again with a new hero, Harry here, who is tasked with sabotaging the Nazi occupation of France by any means necessary. Although the sniping is the showstopper moment of each mission, there's way more going on as Harry must infiltrate unseen and gather evidence as stealthy as possible. And should we fail at this, Sniper Elite Resistance becomes a more typical cover shooter, with close range weapons and traps and melee options to stay alive behind enemy lines. The core campaign is designed to be done alone, yet there is 16-player online shenanigans, and the best thing about this series is a co-op mode made for you and a friend to be twin snipers. And there's also an invasion mode which lets you jump into somebody else's game and ruin their day. Sniper Elite Resistance drops on January 30th on the PlayStations, the Xboxes and the PC. Over to the world of free-to-play, and a quick recap of things you may have missed in December. Fortnite revealed a first-person mode, Ballistic, which is basically a take on Counter-Strike or Valorant, as two teams plant a bomb or defend against it, all the while shooting each other in the dome. And another mode that expands the LEGO experience into a little city. Many people are saying we got GTA LEGO before GTA 6. Now, have you seen Wuthering Waves? The free-to-play open-world action RPG is coming to PlayStation on January 2nd, and with it comes the 2.0 update. This brings a new region to explore with a new story to undertake, a carnival to visit, and even more characters to pull for. Wuthering Waves is indeed a gacha game, and I know that word can scare some gamers away, as random chance does seem unreliable. But like many of the other gacha games, guaranteed drops are baked into the system. The highlight for me is the intuitive combat, which allows us to switch between characters freely to continue combos. Each character has a preferred range and fighting style to master, built on top of a really clean dodge and parry system. And just like the Hoyoverse games, the desire to unlock new characters becomes the addiction. Wuthering Waves 2.0 drops on PlayStation, PC and mobile on January 2nd. There is another free game which popped up just after last month's video, typically. My First Gran Turismo. As part of PlayStation's 30th anniversary celebrations, there's a free version of Gran Turismo 7. And even if you have Gran Turismo 7, you should still play this. Let me explain. In total, there are 18 cars to unlock by playing My First GT, with all those vehicles automatically transferred to the full game. For those new to Gran Turismo, know that this is a simulation racer. No turbo boosts, no crazy drifting, it's as real as life. and that's why gaining licenses is so important, understanding proper braking distances, which differ from card to card depending on setup. And best of all, there's no god-awful microtransactions and awful content grinding, which ruined the original release of the main game. My first Gran Turismo is a bite-sized version of the full game, which I think is well worth a download, especially if you're new to racing sims. Out right now on PS4 and PS5. Another quick note about the free-to-play Star Wars game, Hunters. Originally, it was made last year for mobile and Switch users, but it's beginning to migrate to other platforms in 2025, starting with early access on PC from January 27th. Right now, there is no date for a PlayStation and Xbox version, but coincidentally, some of the official links to that game do say it's now on PlayStation and Xbox. But I checked, it's not true. We have to wait for more info. Star Wars Hunters, by the way, is a fast-paced 4v4 arena shooter, choosing from a roster of new characters, including the Dark Assassin, and the old guard of iconic Star Wars characters and locations. I'll keep an eye on this one and let you know more when I do. Okie dokie, let's transition back to priced games, and one I'm waiting for with bated breath. Eternal Strands, a single-player fantasy action game where the world around us is our weapon, as we can harness fire, frost and kinetic energy anywhere and use it in combat, like with ice to slow down enemies, but also during exploration, like crafting a frozen bridge over impossible drops. We play as Bryn, who uncovers more about the world and the magic that was once housed here, which is now being overrun by the Surgeborn. It's up to us to fend those off and take down hulking great arc giants, and there's a shot in here where we climb across one like Shadow of the Colossus. Oh, and it's also been confirmed that should we die in-game, we will lose our loot, so sometimes it's best to run away and fight another day. Eternal Strands hits PS5, Xbox Series and PC on January 28th. Next, we have a couple of PlayStation exclusives that are dropping on PC this month, Spider-Man 2 and Final Fantasy Rebirth. Spider-Man 2 continues Pete and Miles' adventure as a new threat comes to town in the shape of Kraven the Hunter and Venom. You can make your own 19 inches joke here. Each Spider-Man has their own arsenal of gadgets to harness and probably the greatest quick swap mechanic ever seen in video games. It's pure perfection. Expect all the usual PC upgrades if you've got a rig to support it, coming January 30th. Final Fantasy Rebirth, on the other hand, releases a week earlier and should drastically improve the base PS5 version of the game. After escaping Midgar, we are unleashed in this quasi-open world, riding on the back of chocobos, yet the game also retains all the excellent cinematic cutscenes and the great combat flow of the OG remake. Between these two games, there are over 200 perfect 10 out of 10 review scores from reputable sources, so my recommendation is not needed. There's still a bunch of games worth playing in January. Let's do a speed round of remasters. Another old school Star Wars game returns on January 23rd as Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles hits almost every platform. Ultra retro platformer with beat 'em up style fights and shooting sections with couch co-op too. Freedom Wars, the amazing little PlayStation Vita game, is dragged into current gen this month, set in a dystopian future where the remaining humans fight over limited resources. We are prisoners who are sent out into the world to fight for a greater good, slowly knocking off time from our sentence. If you do play this, don't give any guards any back chat, or they will extend your prison sentence. Combat is a little clunky, because this was made for a handheld a long time ago, so the lock-on function is essential in both ranged and melee encounters. January 10th if you're old school and want to try Freedom Wars. And yet another remaster is Tales of Grace's F on January 10th, the action RPG that originally dropped on the Nintendo Wii, I think, in 2009, with the easiest way to describe it as like a traditional JRPG with more dynamic combat. I wasn't a fan of this one, but if you were, please give it a review in the comments. Right, you survived another new games video, the first of the year. Let's celebrate with some dad jokes. Like this. Yesterday, I was following a Star Wars android to a meetup, but he kept taking me the long way round. We went on an R2 detour. Did you know there's only 25 letters in the Christmas alphabet? Yeah, Noel. And this last one's for the guy who invented the number 0. Thanks for nothing. I'm Adam, you're awesome, it's been a pleasure. All the best for 2025. See ya!